You ready, Greg?
I'm ready, Jay. Let's go.
You're listening to The Success Paradigm with your hosts, Jay Atkins and Greg Gray.
All right. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. So we have a real treat today. So the success paradigm has featured people from every corner of industry, public, private sector. But we're getting a chance to dive into some different waters today as we
Yes.
talk about success from a man who has spent some time in the faith community, a couple of years. So I'm going to give him his due with this introduction, and we will get right into this. So, Reverend Dr. William E. Flippin Sr. I like saying all of that.
Yes.
So, Dr. Flippin is a native of Nashville, Tennessee. Currently, he faithfully serves as senior pastor of the Greater Piney Grove Baptist Church in Atlanta, Georgia. Since 1990, Pastor Flippin has led the Greater Piney Grove congregation to a unique sense of mission and outreach. Dr. Flippin holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in Mathematics and Business Administration from Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee. In addition, Dr. Flippin holds a Master of Divinity, cum laude. We want to make sure we give you your props there from
Thank
Candler
you.
School of Theology at Emory University in Atlanta. And while in seminary, he was a scholar for the Benjamin E. Mays Fellowship and the Fund for Theological Education. Dr. Flippin has a doctorate of ministry from McCormick Theological Seminary in Chicago, Illinois. Dr. Flippin is also a certified life transformational coach and a certified leadership coach trainer, where his main objective is to raise leaders. Among his many accomplishments, he is a proud life member of the NAACP and the president and board member of the DeKalb County Juvenile Justice Council. He also serves as the founder and CEO of the Flippin Legacy Ministries, Inc., the Pearl Initiative, Inc., and Pearls of Great Ministries, Inc. He's the author of 5 books. I only have 2. Now I feel some kind of way. Those books, In My Father's House, Order in the Church, Order in the Pulpit, God's Order, and Vision 2020. He's also co-author of 2 new books, All Rise, Church Staff Building an Effective Ministry Staff, and All Rise, Church Administration, Managing with Ministry Excellence, because excellence is important in the faith community too. These 2 books are lessons on how to build and manage staffing for effective ministry and are based on Dr. Flippin's 30 plus years of experience as a pastor. In 2014, Dr. Flippin and the Grove embarked upon several major building projects. The 1,500 seat worship center, which they completed in 2014, a community resource and outreach center, which was completed in 2016. And I know this one is near and dear to his heart because he had it on his mind from the very beginning. The Grove Garden Senior Housing Community, where there's actually housing made available for senior members of the congregation. This next line is important. Dr. William E. Flippin is also a proud life member of the greatest fraternity on the planet, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. He and First Lady Sylvia T. Flippin have been married for over 43 years and the proud parents of 1 daughter, Sylvia Joy, and 3 sons who continue the family legacy of preaching. Reverend Dr. William E. Flippin Jr., Reverend Dr. Richard C. Flippin, and Reverend Joseph C. T. Flippin. They're also the proud grandparents of a grandbaby, and that's how you say it,
Yeah.
grandbaby, Shamel Imani Flippin, the beautiful daughter of William Jr. and Kedra. So, brother, doctor, reverend, my friend,
Yes.
very successful man, Brother Flippin, welcome to the Success Paradigm. We are
I've
absolutely thrilled to have you here.
been really looking forward to being here with you because I kind of like you a little bit, Greg. So that's a great thing to be there. When you were doing the bio, I said, "Oh my goodness, he left out the part where we got to know each other," but you put that at the end as the greatest part of the bio.
Well,
And I'm not going to argue that.
I thought you might not. So thank you so much for being here and for giving us a little different spin on the globe as it
Yeah.
relates to success, because I think what we're going to find as we ask them questions is that there are some similarities in what moves people to the front of the line. And
Yes.
so
Yes.
uh, we start with a really, really cool question. And Jay sets it up like nobody else I've ever heard do this in any podcast. So I'm going to give the virtual microphone to Mr. Atkins, and he's going to get us started.
Well,
All
thanks for
right.
that introduction, Greg. My question, I really appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Doesn't usually go like that, Pastor Williams, but we'll
It doesn't.
go with the flow. But I got to say, listening to the intro and when I read the intro, what I think is most intriguing for everyone to listen to through this podcast is, all the books that you've written and what you do is just trying to make the thing that you're most passionate about systematic and run well and function well. And I think that's what success is all about. So it's so interesting to me that it doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're in the church, if you're running a business, you really need to have an entrepreneurial mindset and have systems and processes. And I don't know that many people in your business think that way. And I think that's amazing that you actually have broken it down. And I haven't read your books, but by the title of them, it's very intriguing. I can't wait to do this podcast. And how we start this podcast off is, most people are like, "Oh, Pastor, what's he going to tell us about?" And then I hear life coach, and
Yes.
I mean, just what you've done, taken your craft, and you've benefited people in many, many ways. And what we want to know, and what we talk about on here, and where it all builds from, is most people see the glory,
Yeah.
but they don't know the story.
They don't know the story. You've been in church, Jay.
What I'm interested in most about you and most people is, take us back wherever you think it's important for us to hear. And what we really like to hear more than anything is where you've had some failures that have made you a lot better, and maybe some bad decisions that you've made, or who's impacted your life along the way that people need to hear. Because some people are in, you as a life coach know this, some people are in some parts of, they're either, up or they're getting up. And
Yes.
most people are getting up. So talk about your getting up and talk about falling down and tell us part of that story. I loved it. I can't wait to hear
Okay.
your story.
Thank you, Jay. I'll just be real brief about my upbringing. I was reared, as Greg has said, in Nashville, Tennessee, to older parents. I was, my brother and I, we were the second set of children that were not planned. My older brothers were 20 and 23 when I was born. So they hated me because they were no longer the baby and all. But anyway, then there was a younger brother. My mother finished the 8th grade, my dad did the 6th grade. And my grandmother was 70 when I was born. I was her first grandchild. So I was around older people that stress taught older values, if you know what I mean. You get angry and say, well, why my parents can't play baseball? And they were older. But it did cause me to appreciate that everybody who's not able to go get an education does not mean that they're unlearned or ignorant, because they just weren't able to go to school in their time. My mother made it a point for me to be exposed to leaders, to people around me, and it became kind of natural to me. May sound funny, but I remember great pride, Greg, with being a safety patrol officer, telling the kids about crossing the street. I was called the teacher's pet, Jay, because I was the one that would erase the board at the end of the day, etc. And so I was reared in church, very much a part of church. And when, in the Christmas play, if you're Jesus every year, in the Easter play, you're Jesus, they see something in you. So I was reared in the church and very active there. But I did not realize I was a leader. I didn't realize it until my junior year in high school, when I was elected president of the student body. And my peers elected me. And the person that was running against me, his parents were on the faculty at Tennessee State. He eventually became vice mayor of Nashville, and he said the only election he ever lost was me in high school, and we're friends to this day. But so you had the Tennessee State, more educated parents, children voting for Howard. Guess what? I had the project folk voting for me, and we won. But later on, as I look back, that's when I said other people see something in me. And from that point on, I started realizing that I was a leader, even though I might have been fussing every step of the way. Why me? The Moses stuff, get somebody else. They don't know really my insecurities and things like that. So that's the upbringing that my mother instilled me going to school. Don't forget where you've come from. Don't be an educated fool. Don't ever look down on people. So that was drilled in me. However, Jay, when I got my doctorate in leadership in 1988, I graduated. I was really appalled that there were no leadership books on church life. All the leadership books out at that time dealt with corporations, with systems. And so I found myself kind of writing about the Black church in my papers. And the professors were like, wow, this is good. Where'd you get this? And things like that. So I had to correlate the corporate leadership things with the church. So therefore, I started writing books to help people, number one, to understand that the church is a business. It really is. And some people don't want to deal with that, but it is a business. And most of the paradigms and most of the things you have to do to run a business, you have to carry it over into the church. It ain't all hallelujah, praise the Lord, and read the Bible. So I wrote books to help people, and then also to help people not make some of the mistakes I made not having those resources. And so that's why I wrote the books, that they would be, and they're practical books, how to and mistakes that you can make along the way. So that I hope that sort of gives a little background.
And it's funny because when I was talking about you writing books, I'm going to tell you, honestly, I was going to say church is like a business, but I didn't say it because I didn't want to offend anybody, right?
I understand.
But I think everything in life is like a business.
Yes,
right?
it is. Your family.
I got to treat my family like a business. I got to treat it better than my business, and I got to have a do that, and it has to be intentional in everything that I do. So I'm so glad that you said that, because I think church is a business, and it's in the business of helping people. But if
Right.
you run it well, then you can't help as many people. That's your main objective, right? So
Yes.
I think
Yes.
people get offended with it, but so I'm so glad that. But I'm also glad that you had the foresight to actually write something, because I never even knew that existed. Like when I read your bio before that, I was like, wow, that's you're very, very smart to do that. But that's really helpful to, you know, most people I think get into your business to just help people and know
Or to
nothing
make
about
money.
business.
Or to make money. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You're right. And
Well,
so
see, something else that I would not expect you to say is that people get in the business to make money like that. Like
yeah, you do.
this is taking an interesting path, and I'm so glad that you're just throwing that out there. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Sure. Yeah, it is. I want to believe that the generation behind me, and even maybe the one before that, who are more educated clergy, and they have churches now that have 501c3s, they have $1 million budgets, they're building buildings and what have you. And therefore, they have to have they have to have a business mindset. I have 10 full-time staff, 10 part-time staff. So that means human
Resources.
resources, that deals with taxes, that deals with, we got a loan, $4 million to build a church. You got to be audited. And unfortunately, they don't teach a lot of that in seminary, unfortunately. And so if you're a pastor and you just remodel your bathroom at the church, you got to understand business. You got to understand it. And so more and more, though, however, are doing it. And then, not to jeopardize this, the generation prior to me, most of those pastors were bivocational. They may have taught school and pastored, or they had another blue collar job and pastored, etc. My generation and younger, the church, the ministry has become our profession. And therefore, we treat it that way. We just don't show up on Sunday and what have you. So it's more. So I think it's moving in the direction that people understand it more.
Well, Pastor Flippin, Dr. Flippin.
Oh, either
It's
one. Bill.
yeah. Well, I like giving. I've never known you as Bill.
Yeah.
I can't go up. That's too much. I have to be able to
Okay.
keep a little closer.
All right.
I'll work that one in later. But what struck me is that in some regard, what you have been doing and the way you've been focusing on really giving church leaders or aspiring church leaders a blueprint, kind of
Yes.
footprints on
Yes.
the dance floor.
Yes.
And we talk about how many different business books there have been, especially in the 20th century,
Yeah.
around everything from how to create a budget to how to hire people and how to treat customers,
Yes.
and it's kind of fascinating that that in some respect a lot of the church is coming into its own in this space, and they pretty recently. I mean,
Yeah, that's right. I agree.
this is, and so a lot of these um these tools that you're giving people in the book are um big eye openers
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
simple things like
Mhm.
how should you greet people when they arrive at the church.
Mhm.
What
Mhm.
do you do once you take a collection? Where do you go with it? Who counts it? Do
Yes.
you and which I think most people would think of, like, hasn't that always been the case, but not
No.
necessarily so.
No. No. No.
And it could be the demise of some churches.
Sure.
So of
And
the
then some
things,
people who have
yeah.
controlled those things don't want to let it go when you have a more professional clergy and a more professional church. And there
Well,
was some struggles. There were some struggles where the church was really, my church was really, really deacon led because they were the volunteers. But when you start getting staff that was doing what they were doing, some of them had trouble relinquishing that and let the professional staff do it.
Well, that's where I was going to kind of follow, because you've noticed that there was a gap in this. And
Uh-huh.
you mentioned kind of being appalled by it. Um, that was part of the motivation, I'm sure, for doing it. But I'm guessing that part of the motivation was also as you started moving further into the ministry, that you were running into potholes from time to time. Um, so tell us about one of the things that might have been a moment where you might have been thinking, why didn't anybody tell me
Right.
about this? That could
Yes.
have actually, had you not adjusted, could have maybe even derailed whether you stayed on this path or not.
That's correct. That's correct. Before I answer that, and you were talking about the book. That's why I stay busy, like you, going around the country, going to churches, helping them get to that level where I feel our church is and where the church is going in the 21st century.
Mhm.
Service-oriented organizations have great trouble calling the people they serve customers.
Mhm.
They have a great problem calling them customers. What do you call people in the hospital that you provide service? Patients.
Patient.
What do you call people at the university? Students. What do we call people at church? Parishioners or members. But when you begin to help people to understand that you must operate with business principles of greeting people, if Walmart can have somebody at the front saying good morning, when you walk in Walgreens, welcome to Walgreens. Okay, that's the way you have to train your church to do the same thing. And what have you. When you walk into an office, how when I became pastor, Brother Greg and Jay, people could just walk in the church and just go anywhere they want to because they were members. And the only way I was able to reel that in, we had a fire. And of course, we had to know who was in the building. So now
Mhm.
you have to sign in. There were some people that did not like that at all. I've been in this church 30. Why do I have to sign in? And you have to explain. So you got to go to those paradigms. Jay, I remember early on in my pastorate at Piney Grove, people would say, well, you just can't get to the pastor. Um, I used to come up here and sit with the former pastor, and we would talk all afternoon and have lunch together. And I would just, in a nice way, not in a nasty way, I said, have you ever had a toothache? Yes. I said, now you walk in that office in great pain. What do they tell you to do? Sit down. You go to the hospital, you go to the doctor, you have to sit and wait for you to come. But it was a teaching process. It was
because
a
they wanted
teaching
to have
process.
immediate access to
Yeah,
you.
that is
Yeah.
correct. Now, what I want to answer your question. I think when I saw great difficulty after 3 years at Piney Grove, we built that gymnasium in the classrooms. I never had a course on architecture. So when I'd say, let's build this classroom, I didn't know you had to go back and look at the light fixtures, what kind of carpet,
Mm.
et cetera, et cetera. And then if you say, you know what, why don't you knock this out right here and make this door over here? Change orders. That's
Mhm.
when I said, oh my God, I got to step up to the plate. And I left that project saying, I don't want to build nothing else at that church. I said, because it about killed me. The delays, it was during the Olympic time, stuff. But when we built the new church, I talked to people who had built churches and I asked them how did they do it and have their sanity. And by that time, I knew how to develop leaders too. So I cast the vision year before we even start doing anything, and it moved smoothly. So those were some things that really opens your eyes of that building. And then when you would see major churches, especially in Atlanta, growing, you said, what are they doing that I'm not doing? And fortunately, I was friends with those pastors and I could go pick their brains, like Reverend Moore at St. Philip, Reverend Shepherd was at Greater Travelers Rest, which is now how. So I could go talk to them. Jay, whenever you get a chance, look at the papers of Dr. Martin Luther King that he housed here in Atlanta. In his ministry at Dexter Memorial in Montgomery, Greg, he brought out an annual report of what he did every year. And in that report, in his mirror, he would send that report to three people: Daddy King, Dr. Melvin Watson, and to Benjamin Mays. And they would give him feedback. So, Jay, early on in my ministry, early on, I always had three older mentors that I ran almost everything by to get their feedback, their mature feedback. Then I'll say this, and I'll be through with this. When my staff started growing and I was having a terrible turnaround, Dr. Samuel Chan, who I am certified through with the life coach, helped me to understand how do you hire people, how do you fire people, how do you help them with a performance enhancement evaluation. And so, look, I had to move to that level and had to understand if you're getting paid at this church, my first relationship with you is your boss, your manager, pastor second. If you're volunteering here, our relationship is I'm your pastor. Because if you don't do that, if I need to reprimand you, you're gonna say, "But you're the pastor. Why would you
Mm.
say that to me?" So I had to learn all that the hard way. I
And
had to
so
learn
your
it.
books basically kind of you gave people a GPS
Yes, I did.
around some of that stuff.
Yes, sir. That is
Good stuff.
correct. That is correct. Jay, you're on mute.
You're muted.
Hmm. He's so excited.
I'm usually guilty of that, so I took
Yeah,
great pleasure in that moment. Yeah.
I just didn't want to slurp up in the microphone. Um, so first of all, I got to point out something that I've noticed that you said 6 times already in this podcast, and that's
Okay.
my name.
What is that?
My name. It's just I think
Jay.
people should pay
Yeah.
attention. You've said my name like 6 times, and
Hmm.
people love to hear their name. And
Yes.
I just want to say thank you because I think my name sounds really great on here. But
Yeah. Yeah. And that's important to people. I
I
mean, people
understand.
at our church says, Pastor knows everybody. Pastor know, and that's so unfortunate. If you're a leader and you don't know people, you can't lead them because the leadership starts with a relationship.
Yep.
You
So
got to have a relationship with them.
I wanted our listeners to pay attention to that because every time you address me or Greg, you say our first name, and we just met. So
Mhm.
I think it's a really, really big attribute. But what I want to know right now, and I think, I look at my pastor this way, is, you know, in our eyes, they're pretty perfect, right? I mean, when I look at you
Yeah.
and I hear all the
That's what
things
you think. Yeah.
all of the things that you've done and to help people and, you know, writing books and you found
Mhm.
the solution for everything. What have you done wrong? What have you failed at that actually made you better? Like, what's one of your biggest failures that you're like, you know what, that's never going to happen to me again, and then it just made you a lot better?
Yeah, wow, wow. Of course, that first building project, I will never ever do that the same way. That was a big thing.
And
Uh,
what have you learned from that Like, so what happened that made it happen the way that it did that you learned? What was the takeaway learning for you?
mhm. As a visionary, as a pastor, we see the big picture. While I am not a detailed person, I have to surround myself with detailed people once I cast the big vision. And then they will help me to know the nuts and bolts. That's not my gifting. You know, uh, my vision is let's go to heaven. Right? But okay, but there's some stuff you got to do to get to heaven. And so a
Correct.
lot of pastors, because we're visionaries, we see the big picture and we have difficulty that people don't see it. And therefore you got to have people who help with the nuts and bolts. Um, Big mistakes. Here's a big mistake that has nothing to do with the business. I really wish I had been secure enough to tell my church I am spending time with my family. I'm going to a PTA meeting. I'm going to see them play ball. And I tell people, don't neglect your family for your business. Now they turned out okay, but I think they would have even been better if I could have been a little more active in their lives and their development. So that was a thing. So when I preach now, I'm very stressed, and they hear it. God, family, church,
Hmm.
and that's important. The family was instituted in Genesis even before the church was in Matthew.
So
You
so
follow?
basically your takeaway on that is now you're preaching about the priorities that should be in your life to not make the same mistakes that you made as your
That's
kids were growing
correct.
up. And now do you live life differently today with your family and your grandkids because of it? Are you more
Mhm.
involved now because of those mistakes where
Oh yes, almost done. Of course, now when you're a grandparent, you know how to make time to make that happen. Somebody said that if you knew being a grandparent was so great, you never would have had any children. And so, but my wife and I've been married 46 years, and we're sort of empty nesters, so we get to know each other again as we did younger, um, and go places together, and enjoy ourselves, really talking and being honest. Uh, I have extended family in Memphis and other areas. And during this pandemic, once a month, twice a month, we do Zoom calls now. We play bingo, we do some things. And where we weren't seeing each other at all. And so we had family dinner Sunday. And I had a little talk with the whole family because we'd cooked for Labor Day and they didn't come. And I said, now, I don't want you to think I'm getting ready to die, but I want us to get together as often as we can.
Hmm.
Right.
And so before the pandemic, Greg, every first Sunday we would have family dinner here. Everybody would come here on the first Sunday of the month. So that is critically important to me. And then piggyback on that, I quit trying to be successful. Wow. Sit back, Jay and Greg. I quit trying to be successful because the world has defined what success is, right? I
Mhm.
started wanting to be significant. Am I making a difference in the lives of individuals? Will I be remembered not just for the building and the church on I-20 in Glenwood, but will I be remembered for what I instilled in you, what I exposed you to, who I influenced you to get to know, to read? To me, success comes when you learn to be significant.
Well, I want to pick up on that a little bit, that theme, because I know I've known you for about 10 years now.
Right. Hmm.
Um, and what much of the world, even the world of alpha, may not know, Jay, is that I've not been an alpha that long,
Hmm.
but I was driving to a chapter meeting
Hmm.
about about 8.5 years ago. And
Right. Right.
Brother Flippin is laughing because he knows where I'm going
I
with
know
this.
where you're going.
And was just super excited about the fact that, because the organization is a organization that's about serving, and it's about the community, and it's about brotherhood and support, and so I was just giddy with what was
Hmm.
going on. And what I would want people to know about Brother Flippin, Brother Pastor, Reverend Bill Flippin Sr.,
Yeah.
is that most of the things that he does that are significant are things that most of the rest of the world will never know,
That is correct.
because he doesn't talk about them. So when you speak of that, it makes me, one of the things that, when you realize you have more years behind you than you have in front of you,
Right.
um, and you go to a memorial for someone. And I
Hmm.
think the dream scenario that you create when you live a life of significance,
Hmm.
versus chasing success
Hmm.
in a worldly way, is when all these people that don't know anything about each other start
Yes.
hearing that they all have the same story about you.
Uh-huh. Yes, sir. That's right.
Like,
Yeah.
he did that for you too? Oh yeah. And none of them would ever know.
Right.
And I think that is one of the challenges that comes along with embracing a life of significance, because it
Hmm.
doesn't put you on a billboard.
No. No.
You're not going to be, that's not why the news wants to
Mm-mm.
interview you. They want to
No.
interview for the bigger stuff, but for the
Hmm.
moments where someone was hungry and you bought them a sandwich,
Yes.
that's significance. And
Yes, it is.
so I'm glad that you said that, because we have talked about that a couple of times, especially earlier in the podcast, about that those two things are, they can't be separated, if
Yes.
they're going to be genuine.
That's
One
right.
of the other things that I know, oh, the story, by the way, is he's
Yes, I want to say, I can
this
tell Jay
brother.
the
Yeah,
story.
yeah. So I had never considered being chapter president of our chapter, and our chapter is the third largest chapter in the southern United States. And on the way, I get a phone call, and Brother Flippin says, "Have you ever considered being chapter president?" And I almost ran off the road. I remember where I was in the car. We were headed to the chapter meeting.
Uh-huh.
And I say that not so much about me and the president thing, but that it is important that is a moment of significance when
Hmm.
you can see, because someone did that for you.
That's correct.
They said, "I see something in you." And so often I think people spend so much time convincing people what they see in me,
Hmm.
versus me telling them what I see in them. And that
Yes.
changed my trajectory,
Hmm. Sure
not just
did.
an alpha, but as a man.
Hmm.
Because I wasn't a spring chicken when I crossed those
Hmm.
burning sands. But it completely changed, and it speaks to how important it is, to speak life into people and to see in them what they don't see in
That's
themselves.
right. That is right.
But I also know your journey has been a little on the rugged side, so I'm going to pull some of your laundry out. Not all of it, but I'm going to pull
Okay.
a little of your
Okay.
laundry out,
Good. Hmm.
because I know that when you pour out so much of the pitcher, um, it's important that when your pitcher gets empty,
Yeah.
it's difficult to pour out. It's difficult for you to have something in your pitcher when
Hmm.
you're always pouring out into
That
others,
is right.
and everybody sees, uh,
Hmm.
this tall, strong man standing in the pulpit that is speaking life into people. Now you can forget that your back hurts every once in a while too,
Hmm. Hmm.
and maybe you had a special day go by that you recognize for everybody else, and all of a sudden nobody actually gave you a phone call.
That's
So
right.
how do you stay focused on giving the way you do, even when I'm just being really just straightforward about it, when it doesn't feel as though it's happening with a balance for you as much
Mhm,
as you pour out. Because I know how much you pour out. How do you
mhm.
manage that? How do you keep doing it when you feel sometimes that the scale is a little out of balance?
Sure, sure, sure. Well, of course, in ministry, you hear the word calling.
Mhm.
You have to revisit the calling. Just like, Jay, are you married?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Think about those days that you say, Lord, where did this woman come from? Why do how did I hook up with her? But you go back to when you met her, the courtship, the love, the wedding. You follow me? And so when I get like that, I have to always go back and remember why I am doing what I'm doing. The other thing that I want to share, and a lot of clergy mess up with this one, I guess business people too. If you don't have the right spouse, if you got the right spouse that is your helpmate and can speak life into you when you have those low moments and to bring you back where you need to be and remind you who you're doing it for, why you're doing it, why it's important that you do it. She has been that for me because she's a pastor's daughter. And so she always is able now to do it. Then, of course, when I get really bogged down, I take a drive 4 hours down the road to Hilton Head. Don't have to have a passport, don't have to change languages. And I'll just take a chair and go down there and sit all day, maybe spend the night, go back out, walk. I kind of get rejuvenated. I do listen to other preachers preach. There's one or two that I listen to every day or two. That inspires me. And if I write books, that means I have to read them too. So I'm constantly always reading of things that would be self-help, encouraging, and lifting you up. But also, when you're helping people and you see them be successful, that does give you charge even when you're worn out. That gives you charge. It does, believe it or not. You may be tired, but when you see somebody say, "You helped me get in school," or "You helped me with da 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 da," you're like, "That's what it's about. Okay, that's what it's about. I just need to go to bed early to rest."
Amen to that.
Uh-huh.
Well, I mean, I think, those are all really, really great takeaways because I think it's a great question that you posed, Greg. I
Mhm.
mean, I think sometimes, you know, and I don't even think it's just our pastor. I think it could be our wife, it could be our friends that we just take, 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 take. And sometimes
Yeah.
if we're givers, we got to take that time to rejuvenate. And I love that
Mhm.
talked about that. So I want to, I've never asked this question on here before, but a man that's been married to the same woman for 46 years.
Mhm.
And when we talk about success, I will tell you, significance for me, when I hear you say that word, the thing in the area of life that I want to be the most significant
Yes.
is my family.
Mhm.
That's where I want to pour into the most. And, if I want to be a better husband and a better
Yes.
father,
Mhm.
what's your advice from a man's point of view and a woman's point of view? Because you're a pastor and you got to go on both sides. What is the secret for 46 years of marriage? Like for you personally. I'm not saying in general, but I want to
Mhm.
know from you, your experience, 46 years of a marriage and you still talking about your wife the way you talk about her and how supportive she is. I want to make sure in 46 years I feel the same way.
That's correct. That's correct. Well, once you get Greg's age, a smart man learns two words that they say to their wife whenever they're asked something: "Yes, ma'am," and "No, ma'am." That's one measure of success because women tend to be more smart than we are. We won't even ask for directions if we're lost, etc. So you begin after you've with somebody 20, 30 years, you begin to say, you know what, she has my best interest. And let me learn to listen to her. Let me learn to listen to her. A woman has a sixth sense, Jay. You have children, Jay?
I do.
All right.
Pastor, it's funny. I'm like you. I have a 26-year-old.
Oh, wow. Okay. You don't look it. You look like you just barely 26 yourself.
I have a 2.5-year-old, and then I
Oh, wow. Yes, yes, yes.
and I have an 18-week-old in her stomach right now.
Oh
Yeah, so
my.
so when you were telling the story about your dad not being able to play baseball,
Yeah.
I started thinking about when my kids, I'm gonna be 70 when they get out of high school. So
Isn't that something? Yeah. And you go to PT and they'll go to the nigga and say, "Is that your grandparent?"
but
Tell your grandmother.
I'm at a
Yeah.
place in my life where like I love where I'm at versus when I was,
Yeah.
19
Yeah.
years old having babies. So
That's right.
I'm gonna be able to pour into them and give
You
them.
will. You will. You'll be a better father than you were to the older kid, believe it or not. The other thing I think that helps you is that when you first get married and you try to sound so deep and wonderful, oh, we're in this thing 50-50. We're in this thing 50-50. The longer you're married, you have to be 100-100.
Mhm.
Your primary aim should be to please your wife, and hers should be to please her husband. What can I do to make you happy? What can I do to take the load off you? If you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
And you know when you've reached this, Greg and Jay, when you go to the grocery store and don't tell her, and she goes to the grocery store and doesn't tell you, and you come home and you got 80% of the same stuff, you're like, bingo.
That's it.
Bingo.
That is
You're like,
it.
yeah, it's that kind of way. That helps.
We just so we have a book club that meets every Wednesday at 1 Eastern,
Okay.
and we just read a book. I think this was in The Go Giver. I believe the book was The Go Giver, where they were talking about exactly what you were talking about, and not keeping score
Yeah.
is the other part of that,
Yeah.
because when you think 100-100, you're not trying to, it gets you away from saying I'm giving 70, she's only giving 30.
That's right.
Now
That's
you're
right.
keeping score. So
Yeah.
if I'm thinking on 100, all I need to really be thinking is, am I giving 80 or am I giving 100? And
That's right.
it's a shift of paradigm.
Yeah.
So
I think John Maxwell says you need to give 101.
he would be very wise in that respect.
Yeah, John Maxwell says 101. So that's what you have to do. And I guess in business, but I've seen in ministry where marriages have failed, where the wife will say, "You were at church 4 days and you just with us a half a day." Well, I guess I've seen people who love sports like that. And I always this is what I tell wives. Of course, the women are in ministry now, but I
Mhm.
tell a wife, you have to understand your husband is married to two women, you and the church, because in scripture, the church is referred to as a female, right? Don't make him choose because you're going to always lose.
Mm.
You have
Because
to
God,
understand up front when you go into it, he's married to two women.
so okay. So that was a mic drop moment there.
Mhm.
And I think there's not many moments when we're on this podcast where a guest says something and Jay and I both sit there for a second and go,
Yeah, I noticed that.
but there's wisdom in that, because, but not just in marriage. I mean,
Mhm.
so one of the things, so you mentioned having a spouse, a partner, the right teammate right up close to you that will not only pour into your pitcher, but also ladle some out if you got too much in you
That's
too
correct.
much into
Right.
yourself as well.
Yes, sir.
Um, so what I was curious about is, when you are, what would you say? Because I think there's a business component to this as well. Because with entrepreneurs, especially, and I think I see pastors as entrepreneurs. I mean,
Yeah.
but I mean, you are running a business. I mean, it is
Mhm.
that for any entrepreneur, how important it is to make sure that any relationships you engage in, whether they are romantic or otherwise, how important is it to make sure that those markers are laid down early?
Yeah.
Because what seems that happens, even for business people, is like, I didn't know you were going to be spending,
Yes.
60, 70 hours a week on that, working on that
Right.
job.
That's right.
Well, this is who I was, but how important and how should
Mhm.
someone kind of lay that marker down initially, even with
Yes.
business partners, quite frankly?
Mhm.
What do you say? how do you counsel or coach or lead
Mhm.
people in terms of how best to do that?
The only place where I have failed in doing that, and as I back into your question, is with a business, your business, and with ministry, is when you marry, and that was not who you were when you married. So there
Mm,
has to be rebargaining because I've known many pastors who've gotten divorced because the woman said, "I didn't marry a preacher. I still want to go to clubs. I still want to have parties."
mhm.
But now this younger group, they still do that. But you hear what I'm saying? Yeah. but but you hear what I'm saying? That is the difficulty. Now, a lot of times people think we just get up and read the vows, but it says we are not to enter into this covenant unadvisedly, but discreetly and in the fear of God. So therefore, I will not marry anybody that I have not counseled.
Mm.
And in that counseling, that's where you do your markers. How many children you want? Do you want to own a home? Are you willing to move if opportunities came? No, I got to stay here. That's where my mama is. Markers. Do you plan to go back to school? Markers. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because if
Uh-huh.
you don't, if those because those things are going to rear their head at some point in
They're gonna
time.
rear their head. If there's children already that you've had, what is the relationship with those children? How will that be? Can you all get together family wise? How is the previous spouse? Markers. You have to do that. And when you do that, generally you clear all that up before the marriage, the actual ceremony. You clear all that up. I've met people got married, and the new wife didn't want the husband having anything to do with his children because they still live with the first wife. When I said that would just be a no brainer for me. I'm just like, I tell you what, you go somewhere else. I'm not going to neglect my children. And it's awful selfish when someone does that, in my opinion. And when
But
we know,
if you don't get it out, there's questions
mhm,
you can ask that reveal those types of things.
yes, it will. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
well, I think even in business with partnerships, if we did a better job of that, there might be some partnerships that never form,
I
and that
agree.
would not be a bad thing. It
No, it
would
would
actually
not
be a
be.
great thing. Yeah,
Because you have to know your destiny. What is your legacy? You know
right.
what? One day I'm hoping to. One day I hope I'll get rich. Okay, let's talk about how you're gonna get rich. Are you gonna sell drugs? Or are you going to? What are you gonna do to get rich? So you have to lay all that out before the marriage as best you can, and then of course marriage, you all, is growing together. You're pulling together. I moved to Atlanta to go to Emory University, 3-year program. My wife came. We were broke, poor, all of that. But when the opportunity came for her to go to school to get her master's, I said, okay, I got to pick up the kids and get dinner, etc. So you pull each other up together. It's just not me. You have to do it together. And don't you go up higher and then leave her back, or she go high and leave you back.
Yeah, I think the beautiful thing about all your advice, and I think that's why you're a life coach, is because all of this applies to all facets of life. I
It
mean,
does.
if you can do it in your marriage and around your family, and then you can just duplicate that in all aspects of your life, even with your friendships or like Greg,
Yes.
partnership.
Right.
It's just who you become and who you are.
Right.
In social interactions, I think you can create lots of great success in your life.
You
And I
really
think
can. Yes, you
hearing you
can.
talk. So let me ask you this, Pastor Flippin, what was right now at this point in your life, what is
Mhm.
one habit besides driving 4 hours and sitting on the beach and doing the reading thing, which I think is a great idea, I think would fulfill a lot of people. I'm thinking about doing that tonight. Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
what's one habit every day, that helps you be the best pastor that you possibly can be for your people? What's one habit you do every day religiously, no matter what, and it just if not, you feel sick if you don't do this one thing?
Oh wow. Let's see. That I feel sick. Um, Someone has said that I have the spirit of Barnabas, which is an encourager. And every day of my life, I try to text people
Mm.
with words, with sayings to encourage them. So every day of my life, if I feel that I'm not doing that, I feel that I failed that day. I would tend to believe that today I've sent out maybe 20 texts of just a saying. I mean, and they always would say that was just great. Like Greg said, when I uh, encouraged him to be the president, you may not know Congressman Hank Johnson, but Greg would. And he had hepatitis, and so he lost weight and was just not well. And he was running for Congress. And Cynthia McKinney wore him out in a debate, and just didn't look good for him. But at midnight, I called him. I took the chance at me. I said, it just came to me. I needed to call and tell you, don't you give up. Don't you throw in the you're going to make it. And so, I mean, that is what I do. I am an encourager, and I want to encourage people, my family, not to the detriment of me, but just to say you were on my mind today. On my Facebook page and yours, birthdays pop up, right? You see whose birthday today. Sometimes I'll make a list. Most days I'll make a list of all those birthdays, and I'll sit and I'll say, guess what? Some very wonderful people were born today. Happy birthday. And I know they say, how can a man that passes 5,000 folk remember the birthday? But that's my secret at the Facebook. And I kind of do. So I feel like I would have wasted that day if I don't do that.
That's a great habit.
Yep. And that's one that I think all of us could operationalize right
Mhm.
off the bat.
Mhm. It doesn't take long to do it. It doesn't take long to do it.
No. You and I had a conversation. It seems like it was a few Christmases or Thanksgivings ago, and where I told you I was just going to call seven brothers
Mhm.
and just tell them, that I was thinking about them.
Right.
And you were one of those. I don't know if you remember this
I
or
do.
not, but
I do. Mhm.
and it's and I'm reflecting on it now, actually rather emotionally, because I didn't realize at that point, because I didn't know you as well as I have come to know you even now,
Mhm.
that you never know what somebody's day is, what world of hurt or loss or confusion or that they may be going through. And just something as simple as a text or a quick
Yes.
phone call, I just had you on my mind.
Mhm.
And I've started doing more of that actually
Yeah.
because of that phone call I made to you.
Mhm.
If I see somebody, and this is something I would encourage everybody to do, as many people as are interested in doing it. So we have a lot of friends on Facebook. You have thousands, I'm sure. In fact, they are
Mhm.
the comments that are coming through right now.
Oh wow.
Greater Piney Grove is in full effect right
Oh,
now.
that's good to know. Mhm.
Encouraging you
Yeah. Well, they know I
is
love them, and they love me.
yes, but the idea of if Jay's birthday, for example, comes up on Facebook, I have Jay's telephone number. I don't
Mhm.
send him a note on Facebook that says happy birthday. I send him a
Mhm.
text that says happy birthday.
Mhm.
So if there's
Mhm.
ever anyone that comes up on my timeline
Yeah.
and I have their telephone number, I never do the
Mhm.
Facebook one. I do it to them personally.
Yes, that's
And
right.
and I'll look, and there's sometimes I'll text somebody and the last time I texted them was was on
Their
their last
birthday. Yeah.
birthday. Yeah. And you can
Uh-huh.
see it.
Yeah.
But people appreciate that so much. So thank you for that, because that's
Mhm.
something that doesn't just do for them, it does for you too.
It does. It does. And I don't want to make this sound like I'm bragging, because the Bible says, don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing. But in my visor and in my wife's visor, I keep about 25 $1 bills. And
Hmm.
anybody I see on the street homeless, I reach up and pull two of them out. Because the Bible says that may be an angel unaware. That may be, and there I am, except by the grace of God. Sometimes I'll think, when are they going to get drugs, or what are they going to get with this? But that's put in my heart. You encourage them. You give them at least $2, $3 to get a Kentucky Fried Chicken box or something. So I do that whenever I see people.
I bet you don't just give them money though. You give them a word too, because
Yeah,
they come
if
up
I'm
to that
not
window.
if I'm not on Western Channel riding fast, but I will ask them, have they eaten? And here's a phone number that you can call tomorrow and get food. And yeah, I do that. Yeah, you're right.
Good.
And when I do it, my wife will sit down. She said, "You're such a good man," and I'm like, "I'm not doing it for that." 'Cause,
But thank you.
thank you. Yeah, but still, I think that goes further than anything when you make people feel significant, make people know that they count, that they're important, and that God has a wonderful plan for all of our lives. And it is my role with my email address, I Raise Leaders, is to help you discover your destiny. Why are you here? Why are you here? What is it that you have been allowed to live to do? And some people never fulfill that. Gentleman in the Bahamas that Miles Monroe preached and said, "When I leave, I want to be empty. I don't want to take any treasures to the grave." Isn't that
Mm,
something? I want to be empty.
that's
Wow.
fast. That is awesome stuff right there.
So, Pastor, I know legacy is important to you,
It
uh,
is.
and leaving, um, on that note, leaving, planet Earth, whenever that may be. If you had three things that you wanted to leave your congregation or the world with, three things that could help them have massive success, or three things to live by, what were those three things that you would want your legacy to be known for, and what would you want them to live their life?
Mhm. Basically, my favorite scripture is seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. Matthew 6:33. So I'm not saying seek the church, seek religion, but seek God. Put God first. The beginning of wisdom is the acknowledgement of God. Put God. I would hope that they would know that's what I stressed and have tried to demonstrate. I would hope that they would live a life like Dr. Martin Luther King. His favorite song was, "If I can help somebody as I pass along, then my living is not in vain." And so I want to be known that I did help. I made a difference in the lives of people in many ways, scholarship, whatever. And of course, that includes family too. And the final thing is, I trust and pray that I would have left a blueprint for people to see some things that I did and that they can use it as a model for their success. And in my mind, when I'm saying that, I'm thinking about when I was a boy and it would be snowing and my dad would walk out. Of course, his footprint was large, but we would try to keep up with him by putting our foot in that footprint. I want some people to walk in my footprints. Doesn't mean they have to be just like me, but at least I don't have to break the snow. He's broken it for me. So those are some three things.
That's it. It was a list of three, but it felt like about 500 right there. So I have a question for you. So I
Okay.
know that um, you were talking about when the challenge of making the vision of classrooms and gym met construction and contracts and and permits and all that kind of stuff.
Zoning.
Yes, yes. So, but I would like you to think back to, and it could have been that moment, but a moment where before you were Dr. Flippin, um, and before you had your master's in divinity, it could have been when you were at Fisk. Um, a point in time where even knowing, as even being raised in the church and being a God fearing man, that you felt stuck. There, you just felt stuck. What would today's Reverend Dr. William E. Flippin Sr. tell Bill
Yes.
in that moment when
Mhm.
he was stuck? If you could go
Yeah.
back
Yes.
and talk to him, what would you tell him?
Yes. Yes. Of course, when I was being trained as a coach, life coach, that's the whole idea, is to help people get unstuck
Mhm.
because they're at a point they can't move forward. They're stuck with their thoughts and their advancement, their thinking, and their motivation. Well, so when I look back as to what got me out of those being stuck moments, I had the good sense, thank God, to always keep older people around me to mentor me. I would ask questions. When I said I would run things by three preachers, there were times I called and said, I want to quit. As a matter of fact, Dr. Chan, I'm ready to take this church and throw it off the bridge. I didn't say it that nice. I can't move forward. I can't deal with this. But I go back to the people. There was somebody in my life always that will remind me who I was and what they saw as my purpose, even when I didn't see it. And it would cause me to keep plugging. Now, once I became a life coach, Jay, this will shock you. It was the first time in my life that I began to like me. Wow. Buildings, body, budget, all those things there. Sons finished Morehouse, but I still inside would beat up myself. Why people want to listen to me? Why people want to, et cetera, et cetera. And so in order to get unstuck now that I did then is to keep walking in your destiny even when you can't see where it's going. Because if you keep walking, eventually you're going to get to where you need to go. Dr. George Weaver said this story years ago. He and his daughter was driving and they went through a storm. It was a terrible storm. And she asked her father, should I pull over or keep driving? He said, keep driving as long as you can see. Once they got out, again, cars were pulled off to the side. Once they got out of the storm, he said, now, Margaret, we're out of the storm because we kept going. They're still in the storm. Greg, as old folks said, they'll preach.
Yeah,
You
well,
just have to keep going. That will cause you to get unstuck. Now, when you stop, you're going to stay stuck. But you just got to keep plugging, keep going, knowing that you have a destiny that's larger than you.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that's when you stop moving, it's
Yeah.
really hard to get going again, right?
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
you're either up or you're getting up, right? So you're
Yeah.
always, and
You got to move.
you have to, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Greg talks about this a lot about momentum and impetus. You know,
Mm-hmm.
momentum only lasts for so long, and you're going to run out of it.
Yes.
But you gotta run with impetus, where it's just you're just going, no matter you don't feel the wind in your sails. You gotta push harder.
Yes, you do. And you
So
probably won't go as fast during that season, but you got to keep moving.
yeah, I mean, I love the analogy of we're already out of the storm. They're still in the storm, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're
Mm-hmm.
sunny skies and we're fine.
Mm-hmm.
It was scary,
Yeah.
but we're through it.
Yeah.
And that's
Mm-hmm.
there's going to be a lot of scary moments, and that's when people stop instead of
That's right.
going
That's
forward.
right. Yeah.
Well,
I'm gonna give up. Yeah.
so this is a new question too. So you're going to be the first one to answer this.
Oh boy.
And Jim Rohn, which is a great speaker in his time and taught Tony Robbins a lot of stuff. I've read one of his books, and he said we must all suffer from one of two pains, either the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. And I know I've heard people say, I don't have any regrets. I've learned from every single thing. And I'm not going to let anybody off on this. So the future people, if you're listening to this, I'm not going to let you off. So
Mm-hmm.
you don't
Mm-hmm.
have regrets. Because I have regrets, and I'll tell people right now what some of mine are. I wish I would have read more sooner. I'm
Mm-hmm.
an avid reader now, and I think it would be a lot further along. I regret not being a great father when I was 19-year-old and making that as an
Mm-hmm.
excuse for not being
Sure.
present for my
I
first daughter.
understand. Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
what regrets do you have?
Mm-hmm. The regret of allowing being born to older parents, poor. I didn't know I was poor till I went to college. I really did that because we had meals. We didn't live in the best house. When I went to college, I saw people paying for their tuition cash and having leather jackets and all. So anyway, I allowed that to cripple me, to make me think that I was not worthy to ever be beyond that. That was a regret that I allowed that to be internalized. I regret that even though I felt early on that I might be a minister, my wife said on our first date, I said to her, because her dad was a preacher, she said, I pray to God I don't become a preacher. I mean, I don't even remember saying that. So obviously it was on me, but I couldn't see myself being a preacher and wanting to go out to the parties and smoke and, do what other young people were doing my age. So I regret that I didn't accept and embrace that calling earlier and have gotten the training a bit earlier, even though I've made up for it. And therefore, that means I did not study at Fisk in high school of some things I wish I had, as you said.
And the reason I asked this question is because what I would like to do for people listening is to not have further regrets, right?
Yes,
I think we all do. And I think it's a topic that's really good to talk about because
it is.
you
Thank
don't,
you. It is.
and if you just have the discipline or what you just said, which is what I was not expecting, was listen to your heart.
Uh-huh.
Your heart will lead you in the right direction,
It really will.
and your mind will sometimes lead you in the wrong direction. So you got to
Uh-huh.
listen to your soul of
Uh-huh.
what's speaking to you. And I think most of us don't do that. And I really
Yeah.
appreciate you sharing. I mean,
Yeah. There
the
we
thing,
go.
you're such an authentic soul
Well,
because
thank you.
as a preacher to say, I said this, I think what people need to realize in their life is honesty and being real
Uh-huh.
and being true can teach
Uh-huh.
people way more
Uh-huh.
than, saying what you think people want to hear.
And I think that's part of the success I have. My people will say, Pastor, you're transparent.
Right.
In my preaching, I will say, this is what I struggle with. This is what I have struggled with, and what have you. So, and that's a very good question. You ask everybody that, Jay. What do you regret? Because a lot of us who have gotten to our level doesn't even think back. Well, what happened back here that could have stopped me? What was back here that could have messed me up? You being a 19-year-old father, think about how many young men 19 years old and they're still struggling and never got on their feet, you know. And Jay, I don't know if you've ever watched a black church. Tonight, Google a few black churches. The
Oh,
music is upbeat and
I've been like,
the preaching. And so another thing that kept me from wanting to do great, I couldn't see myself. And God, I just couldn't see that. I just like, I can't do that. Every Sunday. So that held me back because I didn't want to. And then I know at dinner, my parents would roast the preacher. Every Sunday we'd eat roast, but they would roast the preacher. And I thought, I do not want to be bothered with anything like that. But so Daddy King said, only accept it when you can't help it. Do everything within your power to not do it. And when you can't do it no more, do it. When you cannot do, yeah. That's it. And in the Bible, it's a paradigm. Jeremiah, Moses, all of them ran. So there has to be that period of running and doubting. And I don't want this. It's too much of a responsibility. The
So,
audacity that I get up Sunday morning, Greg, and I say, I'm
yeah.
speaking for God.
Mhm.
Did you hear me?
That's a pretty big thing
This
right
is
there.
what God said. Man.
And people knew you from back in the day. That ain't nobody
Oh,
but
yeah,
Bill.
I know.
That ain't nobody but Bill.
I hear them say that, yeah.
So, one of the things that all of us, because you are in a people business,
Right.
and it's difficult to be in a people business,
Mhm.
and it's, and one of the things I think is probably because you and I have talked about it, and I've talked to Olu about it
Yeah.
a couple of
Uh-huh.
times, is that when you're in the people business and you're a pastor, you're not supposed to have the same people stuff that everybody else
Yeah.
is supposed to have.
Right.
If a CEO has
Yeah.
people issues, it's like, well, yeah, that makes sense, but
Mm-mm.
you're a man of God. You're not
Yeah.
supposed. And what I really love
Mhm.
is that transparency piece, and I believe that is why. And for those who are not aware, one of the reasons I made this invitation to Reverend Flippin is that, uh, and I talked to my team about this, and Jay and I have talked about this before too. It's that when you are facing some major adversity, what's great will still be good.
Mhm.
What's good may become fractured, and
Mhm.
what's fractured will likely be broken.
Mhm.
And when
That's
this
good.
pandemic hit,
Mhm.
I remember one of the things that you shared, because you already had the scaffolding. You didn't know
Mhm.
it, but you
Yeah.
had the scaffolding to be
Yeah.
able to continue. And there
Uh-huh.
were um,
Yes.
events that the church that actually had more people had eyes on it than
Mhm.
probably would have had eyes on it pre-COVID,
That's right. That's right.
because of having uh, the right scaffolding in place and having
Mhm.
the right scaffolding in place. So I just, it's one of those
Mhm.
things. These times like these, there are churches that are crumbling right now,
Yeah.
but the fact is they were already crumbling.
Yeah, they were.
This just moved it down the line.
Separated. But Greg, let me tell you what I did
Yeah,
just this morning.
yeah.
I have a friend, she does webinars, and she's always had the bigger churches on, what are you doing for the pandemic? And I said
Hmm.
to her yesterday, you need to have some smaller churches, small to mid-size, that have stepped up their technology so that
Hmm.
they can survive. But I can't find any of them. Well, I found 3 this morning for her,
Right,
because you got to help the smaller churches that will not, so they won't fold up, because
right.
they weren't ready to move with this. They weren't expecting this, and like you said, we had the infrastructure. A large church, you have a technological team, you have cameras, but some churches didn't have, anything like that. And so it's important to help even them so that they can survive, because that is somebody's salary, Greg.
Hmm.
That's somebody's livelihood. Okay, you follow me? And
Yes.
so we have to help those people with that.
So
Well,
there's a wrap up that Jay's going to do, because
okay.
I know we've kept you a while. But there's
But it's
something
been
else.
great. Thank you. I've been nervous.
Yes.
I didn't know what y'all gonna ask me,
Well,
but all right.
no one ever knows. But it always turns out we have exactly the right people on here. You said something that I want to make sure that didn't float by
Mhm,
anyone when you were talking about being transparent.
mhm,
And one of the things that we talk about, in fact, Jay and I have these conversations from time to time, because it's we always want to do what we can to help people
mhm,
and to be a value to people. Um, but there are people that, because of where they were raised or the church they went to when they were
mhm,
younger, the preacher is just, he's
mhm.
up there. He's not
Yeah.
touchable.
Yes. Yes.
You don't run up there to the preacher. He's got it busy. He's got
Mhm.
things to do.
Yeah.
And what I was reminded of as you were speaking about this, and there were a number of comments that came through, is that the way you have elevated, um, the way you have been elevated in your field is because you lowered yourself.
Mhm.
And I say lower, I don't mean as in diminish, but you uh, as the
Well, let me share
as
what Dr.
made
Chan
it
said.
plain.
What
Made it
Dr. Ch-
plain.
yeah,
You are
what
just
Dr.
a
Dr.
person.
Chan said of me, and it can be positive and negative.
Hmm.
He said, a lot of preachers, they stay in the pulpit, so they're aloof. That's a figurehead.
Hmm.
He said, Bill, what you've done is taken the pulpit and set it right down in the middle of the church. Now, the danger of that, you can become too accessible and common. But at the same token, I believe, Jay, that the shepherd ought to smell like the sheep sometime. And I can't do that if I don't touch you or not near you. And that's going to be hard when we go back to church when you're not going to be able to touch and hug. That's going to be difficult. But there are other ways you got it. But the point is, I've taken it with it and I've sat it in the middle because
Yep.
I'm a people person and I believe people are important. I would tell my children, don't run up hugging me on Sunday. I got to hug these children that don't have fathers. You got me every day. But they wanted to hug me to show the other children this is my daddy, you know. But I had to explain to them, there's kids who come up to me. And Jay, they really come to me because I give them a $2 bill if it's their birthday. So they'll tell me 2 weeks ahead, my birthday's in 2 weeks, Pastor. Okay, I'll be looking for you.
Well, I think people elevate you because you don't spend time trying to elevate yourself.
No,
I think
no.
is where I wanted to go. So thank you for that. That's
Yeah.
a great lesson.
Mhm.
So one last question, and then I'm going to recap. I know you've seen me writing, and at the end of every
Mhm.
podcast, I do your ingredients for success for people to learn from. So if I don't write it down right when you say it, then I'm not going to.
Right, I understand.
Just real quick, you said you read a lot because you write a lot.
Mhm.
I think is very wise. What's 3 most recommended books that you would recommend to our audience?
Oh, wow. I love biographies, and I'm really a Kingian person. I mean, anything by Dr. King and about Dr. King helps me to understand the struggles of African Americans because they do talk about slavery, so they understand my people. I'm a John Maxwell disciple. I believe in his books. They're excellent books. The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, Developing the Leader Around You, Developing the Leader Within You. Those Maxwell books. I'm doing more self-help as I'm telling you. And of course, Dr. Samuel Chan, I've mentioned his name several times. I want you to Google him. He has some wonderful books on who moved my ladder, you know, and who's holding your ladder. And what do you do when the ladder shifts? And just real briefly, the premise of the ladder, he said he was somewhere preaching and he looked out the window and he saw a guy painting on the second floor. But every time he needed a paintbrush or some paint, he had to go back down, get the paint, and go back up. And he says it's important for us to be clear who our ladder holders are to help us get the job done. And so you can't have a ladder holder who's on the phone. You gotta have a ladder holder who's attentive and following the vision. And so those are books I've read. Okay. You know, but I do still read Maxwell books, any new book that comes out. Lately, Tom Rainer, Thomrainer, has some wonderful books on leadership within the church. Tom Rainer. But the biographies, Greg, I love reading John Wesley and the early pioneers, just to say, and this what helps me, Jay. Oh my God, they went through what I go through. And so look what happened to them. So Howard Thurman, Black theologian Howard Thurman, read their life, Benjamin Mays, and it really does. It does keep me grounded and have some sense.
When do you read? When do you have a reading time? Like I read right after I meditate in the morning.
That's when I read most. That's when I read most. It's in the morning. And of course, my wife's not down here. She may look at this. When she retired, that was the hardest thing of her being in the house. Because for 30 years, I was in the house by myself at least all morning. And she'd wake up in the morning wanting to talk. I'm like, okay. And she would see me with a book. She would see me listening to a tape and still just come and interrupt and go whatever she had to say, and a couple of times I might not have responded in a nice way.
Oh, I
had to learn.
feel you. That's why I wake up super early in the morning. Anybody else, because I need my time. I need
Yeah, I need my time.
my time. And but I would tell you, my wife is pretty supportive of it, but she will do the same thing and ask
Mhm.
questions. And the book's
Yeah.
open, glasses are on,
Yeah.
and
That
then
doesn't matter. That
nah,
doesn't matter.
I
And
got
I bought this house 12 years ago that I live in, and I have a wonderful deck that wraps the entire house. And I spend a lot of time on my deck. I enjoy sitting out there even when it's late at night and it's dark. And I'm just sitting listening to the crickets. And I may have the TV on, but just that's another way I meditate.
nice.
Mhm.
Well, this has been a pleasure,
It's
Doc.
a pleasure meeting you, Jay. Look
Um,
forward to coming to Miami and visiting you.
yeah, anytime, my friend, anytime. And I really appreciate your wisdom, and I think more than anything, your transparency.
Thank you.
I think we assume sometimes that pastors will not be transparent because they have
Right.
an image to protect,
That's right.
and they're there to be strong for other people. But I feel like we got the true Dr. Reverend William Flippin today, and I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
you bringing that to us today and all of our listeners. So
Very
at
good.
this time, I'm going to go through the ingredients for
Okay.
Dr. William Flippin's success and his advice. And we're going to start with you need to see something in you because others do.
Mhm.
Don't forget where you come from. It's what
Mhm.
your mother taught you. Greeting people in your business and in life is so important, and how you do it.
Mhm.
Learn from other people's mistakes.
Yes.
Always cast a vision and tell everyone about it.
Mhm.
Don't be afraid to ask questions.
Right.
Have multiple mentors
Yes.
run things by that you know nothing about.
Mhm. And Jay, add right there too. When you get my age, 68, my mentors have died. So now I also need mentees that I do for them what somebody did for me.
Nice. Ni-
Mhm.
Nice ad. Get that, Lola. Surround yourself with people that fill in your deficiencies.
Yes.
Stop trying to be successful. Just be significant.
That's correct.
Always remember your why.
Mhm.
Always take time to rejuvenate.
Mhm.
Always spend time helping yourself. Listen to your spouse.
Mhm.
Please your wife.
Mhm.
Be 100 with your wife
Mhm.
and your partnerships and your friendships.
Mhm.
Always set the right precedent with people. Ask the right marking questions in any relationship. Know your destination. Encourage people every day. Always have smarter people than you around.
Mhm.
Keep moving even when you don't feel like it.
Mhm.
Your legacy, I added one in because I think this is your legacy. So I apologize ahead.
Mhm.
Seek God first.
Mhm.
Always help others.
Mhm.
Leave and lead a path for others,
Mhm.
and be transparent.
Mhm. Can I add one more at the end, which would be a great one?
Absolutely.
Learn to say, I am sorry.
That's a really good one.
Hmm.
And then books, John.
Learn to say that to people because you're not perfect. When you build yourself up as perfect, you need to learn to say, I am sorry. I made a mistake. I read this incorrectly. Got to
Very
do
good.
that.
And
Humility.
books, John Maxwell, which is
Mhm.
funny because I was in a training with him
Oh, he's wonderful.
this weekend, and he actually did a sermon on Sunday because he's also a preacher, and
Mhm.
I'm gonna be in
Mhm.
training with him on Thursday every week for the next 12 weeks. So
Tell him, is it personal or on tape?
there's going to be other people involved. It'll probably be 12, 14, but we have access to him. Yeah. So
Tell him you met me. Tell him you met me. When I met him, he said, hey, Bill, I'm glad to meet you. I understand you are the black John Maxwell. And I said, no, no, John, you got it wrong. You're the white William Flippin. And I begged him to hire me so I could blackanize his books. I did because his books are excellent, but they may not always work with every ethnic group.
Well, I'll have to tell him that. I'll tell him
Yeah.
that I
Please
met.
tell him. Yes, I've traveled with him and everything.
I'll tell
Please.
him that I met the the black. Uh,
Yeah.
and then
Thank you.
the John Maxwell books, 20 Irrefutable Laws.
21.
21.
21. Dr. Samuel Chan's books, Martin Luther King's books and biographies, and Tom Rainer.
Yeah.
Um,
Those are good books.
those are great ingredients for success, my friend.
Yes, sir.
Shared a
Yes,
lot
sir.
of knowledge today. I would tell you this. We've never had this many comments on Facebook
Are you
about
serious? Really? Okay.
They are still pouring in.
you are
Oh
a
my.
man, and I think the legacy that you've left and that you've worried about, I don't
Yeah.
think you need to worry anymore.
No, that's right.
I think you could live in peace, my friend. There's a lot of people that love you and admire you and look up to you and learn from you. So
Thank you.
I have, and I know many do every week. So thank you so much.
And
Sure
I
thing.
absolutely do. I thank God for you every day, Brother Flippin.
I know. I think the world of you, Greg. You're a wonderful man. And so proud of you doing this. It's really important that people share their story and people understand that it's an uphill journey for all of us, but we have to know where we're going and get there, and keep folk like y'all around.
Well, this is a passion project of ours. We want to just, if we can help one person a day from this, that's
That's right.
for us.
I'm so proud to be a part of it. So very proud.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dr. Williams.
All right.
Have a great day.
All right.